Commissioner Dozer? Here. Commissioner LaPousse?
Here.
Chair Herlinger is absent, and Commissioner Jones should be arriving soon.
But we have a quorum, so we can continue. So, Madam Clerk, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Vice Chair Hill, can I have you guys turn on the mic? Thank you.
Sorry. Any changes to the agenda?
Vice Chair Hill, we do not have any changes to the agenda.
Do we have any general public comment, either by phone or in person?
Vice Chair Hill, we do not have any in-person or online public comments.
All right, so I think the next item on our agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from March 27, 2025.
I would make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second that motion.
All right. All in favor? We don't have our...
Aye.
Aye.
Good enough.
Motion passes.
Okay. So I think our next item on the agenda is the City of Santa Barbara fiscal year 2026 and 2027 budget overview and the presentation of Finance Director Keith Martini. And is Mr. Martini here? Right here, ready to go with the
Yes.
computer. Okay.
Good morning, members of the Police and Fire and Police Commission. My name is Keith DeMartini. I'm the Finance Director for the city. I'm here with Ms. Natalia Glusik, the city's budget manager. And it is our pleasure to present an overview of the city administrator's recommended budget for the next 2 fiscal years. The agenda for this presentation item today is to give a quick overview. We will focus on the general fund. That, again, is primarily how the police and fire departments are both funded. We'll talk about the budget hearing calendar. We won't do an online demonstration today, but happy to bring it up if you'd like, and then we'll take some Q&A. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Glusik.
Thank you, Mr. DeMartini. Before you, we have our budget development phases. Basically, there are 5 phases that we go through, starting with the base budget where the finance department generates some numbers, then departments come back with input on that. We have an internal finance review by which there's a collaborative effort to produce a recommended budget, which is where we are now, and doing some staff presentations and taking feedback from the public boards, commissions like yourself, and also council meetings. And then the next stage will be going for budget deliberation. That will happen in June, as well as the adoption. We do have a completely online budget book that has been out there for a couple of years, has been our modus. You can easily reach this budget book by going to our website or clicking on the link within this presentation. And every year we try to make improvements. We take feedback from the public to try to make things easier to navigate, clearer to understand. And also we've added a few things this year, such as some special landing pages to try those out and see how they work. The format of the online recommended budget is that there is a budget message, which gives the overall theme of the city administrator's vision for the year and what we intend to do as a city. And then there are summary schedules, which are a very high view of the sections of the city. So you have your community profile, positions, et cetera. And then within the operating budget, each department has a program overview and then detail on their performance measures and what they plan to do with the money for the year. You can also drill down on these to get a little bit more detail in the online budget. Here you have expenditures by major fund. You'll see that there are a lot of enterprise funds within the city. These are groups that supply services that are paid for by the people who receive those services. So they run a little bit more like a business, but it is still public money. And then you have the general fund, which is 30%. That's where the general purpose programs are. So things that are general benefit to our citizens, such as police and fire, our safety groups, library, parks, et cetera. And then there are a number of other smaller special revenue funds. Every year there are changes and challenges with our budget. So this year, our tax revenues, while still very strong, we have property taxes, transient occupant taxes with the hoteling industry, but also sales taxes. They were growing at a very strong rate in past years post-COVID, and they have kind of leveled off. So they're still growing, but at a slower rate. Of course, there's also economic uncertainty, which is kind of normal, but this year it's a little bit heavier. We are also implementing a strategic plan, a formal strategic plan for the city. So that is in the works, and we are trying to make sure that things are aligned with that strategic plan. There is the Measure I tax implementation recently adopted, and Mr. DeMartini will get into that in some detail in a moment. We've also recently completed a class and compensation study that's been long overdue, and so we will be implementing that study in the coming cycle. Pension costs do go up each year as we have people retire and age out of the city, so that is a constant issue that we do have to work on. That's a challenge. This year, we have very specific direction to focus on our project delivery. Over the years, we've had a number of projects that we have committed to, and we really want to make sure that we deliver on all of those before we start new projects. So that's our focus for this coming cycle. We also have a reorganization, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail in a moment, whereby we're taking the downtown homelessness housing services and we are reorganizing those by taking them out of community development and public works and placing them under the city administrator. So as I said, we're having a bit of a reorganization here. So this is the current organization of these programs. You'll see in the pink and kind of purpley blue in the middle under community development, the Housing and Human Services group, as well as the Community Vitality Initiative group, which deals with all issues State Street and economic business assistances. Under Public Works, this is a very small portion of Public Works, of course, but this is just the downtown parking group you will see in the green and blue. We are moving those to a new position under the city administrator called the Deputy City Administrator. This is the only new position that's being created out of this. We are leaving Transportation Administration under Public Works, under the engineering group, but the rest of it is rest of downtown parking and downtown services, which would be plaza support and the downtown ambassador program. So the people you see in the red shirts helping our tourists and citizens out there just doing their thing. So that's what the reorganization looks like. And now I'll turn it over to Mr. DeMartini.
Okay, great. So we'll talk about Measure I. Measure I was a half-cent sales tax measure that the Santa Barbara residents approved back in the November election. And that tax measure was communicated and will be implemented to continue to fund ongoing essential services to this community. That includes the services of police, fire, Parks and Recreation, library, and a number of other services. And the tax rate took effect on April 1st, so we're about a month in. And so fiscal year 2026 will be the first full fiscal year of realizing Measure I revenues. Staff project that we'll receive around $15.1 million in fiscal year 2026, growing up to $15.5 million the year after that. This slide presents the comprehensive plan about how staff is recommending to spend those Measure I sales tax revenues. First, starting with the police department, we're proposing to fund 34 police officers, three of whom were previously funded in a prior fiscal year to achieve expenditure reduction targets, which we no longer need the police department to achieve. Next, with the fire department, we're proposing to fund 19 firefighters with Measure I sales tax revenues. For Parks and Recreation, we're proposing to fund 8 positions, and then also add back some reduced funding for some after-school programs in a collaborative effort with the school district. So to basically replenish funding that was cut in a prior fiscal year. We're proposing to fund 5 librarians, and then also provide ongoing funding for security services and digital collections that were previously funded by one-time sources. So wanting to allow those services to continue going forward. And then also to fund ongoing services from existing homeless service providers. There's 5 contracts that we have, and there's some shortfall in some of the funding in those contracts, so we want Measure I to pick up the difference. Those are all existing essential services. On top of that, we are proposing to fund 2 separate transfers for housing and homeless services into a separate fund that can be used at the discretion of the city council, and then also a direct transfer into the newly created local housing trust fund, which would be primarily used for capital as it relates to housing production. So this is the plan that's before city council at this time for Measure I. I'll turn it back over to Ms. Glusick.
Thank you. So with our downtown parking group moving under the city administrator, we are trying to be very, very strategic about how we handle our assets within the city. So we're basically pausing a lot of the capital spending while we do a large-scale assessment of all of those assets. So we do have some capital that is happening, but most of it is on pause. There's also several efforts in an effort to go through we're doing like a phase 1, phase 2. So phase 1 is to stabilize the downtown parking fund. And then phase 2 is to bring a lot of the benefits from the downtown parking group to the residents of Santa Barbara. So they are piloting a pay-by-plate system in a small lot off of Helena. They're going to look for things that are going to offer affordable off-street parking for our downtown residents. We're looking at discounting employee parking, not just for the city employees, but for employees of people who work downtown. So there's some schemes for that the downtown parking group has some more detail on. And also to limit the courtesy periods where people kind of go on a carousel in and out of the parking lots to not pay, which really reduces productivity downtown and adds to a number of other problems. We also have in our budget book our core objectives. So each group has some goals that they want to reach under these 3 major groupings, trying to keep the city properly staffed and engaged with a thriving workforce, organizational optimization, constantly looking for efficiencies and ways to streamline things, and also innovation so that we aren't just doing business as usual. If there's a better way to do it, we try to find it. We have a cost recovery policy for when we set our fees at the city. So basically, we are a cost recovery group. We cannot set our fees higher than the full cost recovery. And the way that we determine how much of that cost is recovered is basically by how far the benefit is spread. So for instance, if one individual has the benefit of the service, so our example, if there is a private tennis lesson or a facility rental, we aim for an 80 to 100% cost recovery on those kinds of fees, all the way down to things like public safety and park maintenance, where if there is a fee, we do a cost recovery of up to 20%. You can see our list of annual fee changes on our website in the full document for our recommended fees. This is the red line version, and by red line I mean we looked at the old version, the one that was published and adopted, and if there was a change, there is a line through it, and you can see what the difference is. So that is a very long document, but we do have the table of contents linked, so it will help you navigate through it. But that is also a part of our budget process, is to go through all of the commissions right now in May for review, and then City Council will review and give their recommendations later this month and also in June. And now I'll hand it over for general fund overview.
Okay, so the next section of this presentation is to just talk generally about the city's general fund, which is primarily houses all of our tax revenues that come in and some departmental fees, and it pays for public safety, parks and recreation, library, and a number of other general services. This graph here shows the multi-year general fund forecast with the last couple of years of actual data, where we're projecting the end of this current fiscal year and then moving forward the next 5 fiscal years. And you can see that the green dotted line is our revenues and our red solid line is our expenditures, and we are pretty darn close to a balanced budget in fiscal year 2026. And the primary reason for that, again, is to continuing to control our expenditures, but also the full implementation of Measure I, which is basically a new revenue source into our general fund that is helping us achieve financial stability. But as you can see in the out years, the gap widens, unfortunately, between revenues and expenditures. We do continue, and we will continue to have financial challenges. the rate of growth of our expenditures is outpacing the rate of growth of our revenues. And this is a common issue across cities across California. And so this will be a continued focus for our organization to continue to balance our budget going forward. So this table represents sort of the numbers of our revenues and expenditures over the last couple of years, again, showing a very minor surplus in fiscal year 2026. But I do want to point out to this commission that we do have a reserve policy target. The city council policy target is 25% of our annual operating expenditures are to stay in the bank and be available when there is a disaster, when we need to dip into them for a variety of reasons. We have done that on multiple occasions throughout the last number of years, and it's really important for this community that we have those resources available. So we need to continue to invest in putting money into our reserves. So when you take that into consideration, we are showing a deficit. And so there's a nuance there that I just want the commission to sort of understand and have the public realize as well. This table here shows our general fund revenues. You'll see the new Measure I revenue source on the third line on the table. A couple takeaways on this slide is that our revenues are continuing to grow. We are projecting growth pretty much in all of them. There are a few smaller taxes that we're not projecting growth on, such as cannabis and real property transfer tax. But the vast majority, we will likely see growth. And also, we have a diverse set of revenue streams. We are not solely reliant on one or two taxes, which some cities across the state are. And that's really good for us, right? When one revenue source might be volatile or go down, other ones sort of pick up the tab, right? So that's a really good situation for our general fund to be in. This next slide is our expenditures. The vast majority of our general fund tax dollars fund people. It funds the people that deliver services to this community, in particular, public safety. About half of the general fund goes to funding the public safety functions of police and fire. And you'll see that we also have a number of expenses with supplies and contracts, but also equipment and capital. Our capital expenditures are primarily funded through Measure C, which was the 1% sales tax that the voters approved about 6 or 7 years ago. I talked about reserves a little bit earlier. This graph here shows the last 6 years of our general fund reserve trends. And as you can see, in 4 of the prior 6 fiscal years, we were below our reserve policy target level of 25%. The blue part of these stacked bar charts are our disaster and contingency reserves, which total 25%. But you can see there are a few other smaller categories of our reserves, which are restricted for contractual obligations and prior year actions of the city council. And so it's important that we keep cash in the bank for these reserves to be able to have on hand for disasters and contingencies and other contractual obligations. And as we move forward into fiscal year 26 and 27, if we do experience operating deficits, which we will likely experience, the gap between the target and the actual reserves will unfortunately widen. So again, focusing on reserves is a really important strategy for us going forward. Turn it back over to Ms. Glusick.
Before you have the hearing schedule, we have been through quite a bit of it so far. It starts with the Finance Committee meeting talking about our clean energy rates back in February. We introduced the budget at the bottom of the left column on the 22nd of April, which is largely where this presentation is coming from. And we also went to Finance Committee to review a high-level overview of each department. And next week on Tuesday, we are going to go over in detail each department and all of the funds. So that will be the entirety of the budget instead of the usual splitting up of meetings that we've had in past years. It will all be done on one day. Then there will be a special council priority setting workshop on the 3rd, and that kind of goes along with the strategic planning that we're doing. The solid waste public hearings will be on the 10th of June, along with budget deliberations when we go for final direction from council. And then hopefully on the 17th, everything will be adopted once we incorporate all of those changes.
That concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
All right, first, are there any questions from the commission?
Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. My apologies for being tardy. I'm moving, so it's this whole other thing. But I did have a couple questions with regards to the Measure I funds. Since it began in April 1st, I know you indicated those funds beginning fiscal year '26, but you're still collecting, for a couple months now before fiscal year. I was just wondering if there's any designation for those little bit of funds for the current fiscal year.
Yes, Commissioner Jones, thank you for that question. So for the current fiscal year, we are projecting a deficit in fiscal year 2025. And so as of right now, the Measure I revenue that's being collected from starting in April 1st through the end of this current fiscal year, so 4 months worth of revenue, will go as to be an additional revenue source to help reduce the deficit in the current fiscal year.
Great, thank you so much. Can you please go back to slide, oh, no, there was something else. Positions additional. Now I can't read my notes, that's all right. A little bit discombobulated, forgive me. Could you go back to slide number 12, on the downtown parking slide? I'm sorry if I missed it, the creation of downtown services program, could you just unpack that for me a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Commissioner. Thank you for the question. So right now, as we're sitting here, there are 2 programs that are under downtown parking's purview, and those are the Downtown Ambassador and Plaza Support, so all of the cleaning of State Street, et cetera. So those 2 programs are going to roll up under the new Downtown Services Program. So it's the same groups, just a different branding.
Got it, thank you. Can you please go to slide number 20? Under other revenue, did I get that right? General fund.
Are you referring to this one, other revenues? Yeah.
Yes, the other revenue. Thank you. Sorry, slide 19.
No problem. Is your question about what is that?
Yeah, since it's the largest piece of the pile, I was wondering if what constitutes that.
Absolutely, yeah, no problem. So there's a number of other revenue sources other than sort of these larger taxes. For example, various departments charge fees. We had talked about the fee schedule a little bit earlier in this presentation. So, for example, for a fire inspection, an individual might have to pay a fee. Or for a participant in a recreation program, a participant will have to pay a fee. And so there's a number of different programs and services that are fee-based. Those departmental fees are in that other revenue column, and that's primarily what's in there.
Got it. Thank you so much. And then lastly, maybe I was thinking about, no, that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. I have one question while you've got that slide up. And that is, what does T&U mean?
Yes, T&U stands for transactions and use. And so it's different than a sales tax. So our Measure C transactions and use tax and our Measure I transaction and use tax are applied differently depending on where the sale might occur. It's commonly referred to as a sales tax because it is assessed on the sale of a good, but it's a different legal tax. And so there's sort of a difference of definition there, but it's generally referred to as a sales tax.
Excellent, that helps. Ms. Dozer, do you have a question?
I just had a quick question. I apologize. I did not write down, like my fellow commissioner, which slide it was, but I know it was at the beginning. And it's just a small clarification, because I think you said it, but it was discussing the number of proposed police officers and firefighters. I think the numbers were 19 and 31.
Yes.
Is that a proposal for, because I also saw that it said existing, and I wasn't sure what that meant, filling positions or new positions?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to clarify that, yeah. So let me start by answering that question with just reiterating the purpose of the tax measure was to continue to fund existing essential services. It was a Santa Barbara essential services measure. And so staff is proposing to fund existing positions, existing staff with this Measure I revenue. So think of it as another revenue source that is going to be able to fund existing services. And so we're not proposing to add any new positions with this revenue. So we're going to effectively fund existing police officers and firefighters with this revenue source.
So that would effectively free up the money that's being used for fire police to use in another area?
No, unfortunately, no, that's not.
Take that money back?
No, we're not taking that money back. So the city was, before Measure I, was facing a rather substantial budget deficit, okay? And so let's say the city's budget was $100, but we had $105 worth of expenses for our ongoing police officers and firefighters. This becomes the filling of the gap, okay? Measure I fills the budget gap to be able to fund those services ongoing. And so it doesn't free up any extra money. It helps reduce our budget deficit. It's another revenue source to fund these services.
Thank you.
So seeing if I understand it, without Measure I, both fire and city would have been faced with projected significant reductions in their personnel because of lack of funds to cover the existing personnel. And
Yeah.
that's now been protected by Measure I.
That is a very fair statement. What we have done in the prior, really 5 fiscal years in a row, we've had to implement expenditure reductions. And the largest strategy in achieving reductions was to either eliminate or freeze the hiring of positions, many of whom are in the police department and the fire department. With Measure I and just our continued fiscal discipline with controlling our expenditures, we no longer have to do that in fiscal year 2026 and 2027. I'm not saying we will never have to do that again, but for right now, with the implementation of Measure I, we are moving forward with backfilling sort of positions that have been frozen and making sure that we have a continued ongoing revenue source for these positions going forward.
Excellent. That's kind of good news. Thanks.
Yes, it is.
Are there any other questions? Do we have any questions from the public?
Vice Chair Hill, we do not have any in-person or online public comments for this item.
Do we have further commission comments on this issue?
Thank goodness for Measure I.
Yeah, we all voted for it, I hope. All right, thank you. Hearing no further comments on this, we would move forward to the next item on the agenda. If you read that for us, please.
Item 7, Santa Barbara Police Department Fiscal Year 2026 Proposed Budget.
All right. Thanks for your patience while we did a little musical chairs.
I see.
Good morning. So I'm going to have our budget manager, Alec, do a majority of the dollars and cents piece of it. So we'll get right into it. First, I want to give you just a little overview. We're going to talk about the current organization of the department, do a little overview of where we're at, our priorities, and then we'll get into the meat of the budget piece, which is where I'm going to turn it over to the person that keeps us on track when it comes to all things budget. So I know it's very difficult to see, but the good news is that you all get a copy of this, so then you'll be able to look at it, with your magnifying glass. It's not any easier, but this is our current organizational chart. So you'll see chief of police, you'll see 2 assistant chiefs, you see our internal services manager, and then, from there you go down to our community accountability, our criminal investigations commander, strategic ops, patrol. You'll see the whole picture. I'm happy to answer questions on this when we get to the end, but I'm just trying to give you an overall kind of big picture on the different bureaus that we have. So you can kind of look at it from a standpoint of, we have an assistant chief that oversees what we would consider our patrol division, which includes all patrol functions and our dispatch services. So that goes everything from those that are answering the 911 call to the patrol specialty teams, which includes like traffic and the community action team and co-response. Those are all within that piece. So basically, the officers that are out on the street day to day are overseen by that assistant chief and the patrol commander. And then also our dispatch, which is responsible for the day-to-day dispatching of all the calls. So I just trying to give it to you in a way that you can hopefully understand it. The other assistant chief oversees criminal investigations, which that includes our regular detectives, our special investigations, our crime lab, our property room, our police techs that help our investigations. You then also, that assistant chief also oversees what we call strategic operations. That is all things hiring, recruitment, special events is all under that umbrella. And you'll see what we now currently have. Our command structure is you go assistant chief to our commanders, and then we have 3 lieutenants in patrol. So those 3 lieutenants in patrol actually see, so one oversees one side of the week as a watch commander, the other sees the other side of the week, and then we have a lieutenant who oversees all those specialties. So I'm just trying to break it down for you in a way that hopefully will make sense when you maybe can see it a little better. There's not really a great way. We've tried to, find a different way, but it just is long the way that it looks. And then our internal service manager, Lori, oversees our records, our business office, and IT. So a majority of our professional staff. And that allows us to have room for growth and really promotes that opportunity piece. And also having professional staff oversee professional staff is also very important. And that's something we instituted a year and a half ago, I think now. That used to actually be overseen by another assistant chief. So we made a change a little bit ago on that, and it's worked out very, very well. And then off to the far right, the Community Accountability Commander, which you all know is Commander Casapis. He oversees all of our, what we call PSU, but that's all of the complaints, all of the things that we bring before Fire and Police Commission, and now as well, all of our public engagement with our new Public Engagement Coordinator, as well as our Public Information Officer. So that kind of gives you, and we've also now included our training officer, which is now part of that. And we've discussed how that now works with having training under community accountability. One thing that I'm sure you can't see it, but we are through this budget process, if it gets approved, and you'll see it on a further slide, is we're going to add a crime analyst, and we did that through internal budget adjustments. We think it's really important. With the formation of the Fire and Police Commission, we did not get any new additional administrative staff to go with that. And we don't actually have a crime analyst. We have a wonderful police coordinator who pulls statistics for us, but that's not where her training's at. We've sent her to classes and different things, but she's now doing additional function that she wasn't before. And her expertise is actually in our CAD and RMS system and assisting in that area. So we need an actual crime analyst that can take the information that we're trying to do for Fire and Police Commission, as well as when we have trends and crime trends in the community, to be able to assist internally in those. Our monthly mapping of what we have going on so that we can make appropriate decisions when it comes to how we're deploying resources. And like I said, we did that through internal budget adjustment. This gives you an overview of the department, 211 full-time equivalents. So that's doesn't include our hourlies, but that's the number of full-time employees we would have if we were completely fully staffed. We'll go over the budget pieces coming up. A couple other changes for the next fiscal year is we actually didn't have a budget for vehicle collision repairs, so we have requested to add that. We've had to try to just find different places to take that or take it from salary savings And what we're trying to do as we work through the budget with finance is making sure that we are actually appropriately budgeting for all of our expenses. And the hope being is that, we will continue to reduce our number of vacancies and not be trying to just take things from salary savings. The restoration of the 3 police officers plus the sergeant that were held from previous budget reductions, and then, like I said, the additional crime analyst position. We are making some fee changes. We're animal control fee adjustments, parking violation penalties and related fees, and a new proposed fees associated with our massage establishments. Measure C, we'll go through that more in depth later, and then the Measure I, which you've already heard about. Our department priorities going into fiscal year 26, as they have continued to be, is clearly retention and recruitment. I will tell you, retention goes first for me at this point. Our recruitment is 100% a priority, and we are doing a really outstanding job. The team has really stepped it up with recruitment, and we have to continue. That will always be an ongoing priority, but retention and what we're doing to retain the officers and professional staff that we have that's a major priority for us right now. Completion of a strategic plan. So our goal will be in fiscal year 26 will be to do a strategic plan. As part of that, it will include not just internal stakeholders and sitting down with officers and professional staff, but it will also include engaging with the Fire and Police Commission as well as the community at large. So there'll be opportunities for us to work together as we work through that strategic plan. We are working on an organizational wellness plan. So instead of just having separate programs, we're really trying to bring that and organize that into one plan and figuring out where we need to take that in the future. And continuing our community engagement with the addition of our community engagement coordinator. We've been doing a lot more community engagement, but we have to kind of find the balance and what is going to be the right size for that as we move into the future. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alec for dollars and cents.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I wanted to go over the revenues and expenditures for the recommended budget for fiscal year 2026. One thing to note with the revenues and expenditures shown today, it includes the recommended budget from the department's general fund, state funding, grant funding, Measure C, and Measure I funding. So it's all of our different funding sources put into a good snapshot here for you. Starting with the revenues, the recommended budget has, the bottom line is a $5.5 million FY26 recommended budget. Kind of getting as a general overview, that increase from our FY25 is primarily comes from our fee adjustments that we're implementing within 26. Rather than going through each of the lines, I wanted to highlight more of the major changes within these groupings. Specifically with our fines and forfeitures, these additional revenues seen in 26 are through our parking citation fee adjustment. This was recommended as a result of increased staffing and software costs within the department. Moving to, or kind of up, back up to licenses and permits, you'll notice that the recommended budget is $186,000, up from $105,000 from FY25. Primarily, this is from the redevelopment of the massage establishment and sole proprietor permits that the department is recommending that we're going to redevelop the municipal code to increase public safety within the city. That program itself was implemented within the 70s, and we want to increase it, or redevelop it, and then with that, we are redeveloping the fees for those associated permits. Moving on to expenditures. Let's go here. You'll notice that it's a pretty significant change from FY25 to FY26. $76 million is the FY26 recommended budget. The primary kind of increase to this is from the capital equipment and projects. That is specific to the new building funding, and that is managed specifically through Public Works and is related directly to all new building related costs. We anticipate that with the new building development, additional funding or recommended budget is going to be approved within this specific category. Going into supplies and services, I wanted to note that there is a decrease within our supplies and services at 3.8 million. This has been a result of our Measure C funding, which is specific to our police duty equipment replacements. While it does, a lot of our funding or expenditures are moving to Measure C, this has allowed the department to appropriately budget our software increases, and it has given us the opportunity, rather than using salary savings to fund specific expenses throughout the year, we're now being able to appropriately budget within our own general fund. And then, let's see. Going into Measure C funding, this gives a good breakout of the what has been earmarked for FY26. We're continuing the Measure C, the $450,000 equipment replacement, similar to FY25. That's going to continue into FY26. The department is extremely grateful for this because it has allowed us to appropriately replace critical police duty equipment. In addition to this, the department is recommending Measure C funding for body-worn and vehicle camera license. This is the annual licensing renewal of previously established equipment. It's just the license renewal for that specific year, and it's continuous. And then noted is the Measure C new building debt service. That is, was from the previous slide, that is the $13.9 million increase to the recommended budget. Just going over, the chief can speak to this a little bit more, but I wanted to highlight our Measure C fiscal year 2025, so this year's equipment projects. We have a number of ballistic vests that we have to replace throughout the year. We complete that using grant funding, but it's also supplemented using Measure C. Additionally, we're purchasing e-bikes for duty use for our community action team, push bumpers for our patrol vehicles. This is being funded by the Homeland Security grant, but it's also being supplemented through our Measure C funding as well. Patrol rifles, and then our regular duty equipment is kind of one of the highlighted projects for this year. As noted previously in Keith DeMartini's presentation, I had noted the Measure I funding. This is just showing the overall recommended budget or the funding being received through Measure I, and this is funding the 34 police positions. The objective of this slide is to really give you an understanding of our discretionary spending, specifically with the supplies and services, showing that the majority of our salaries and benefits, or showing that our budget is primarily salaries and benefits, and that we have very minimal supplies and service discretionary spending. So that equates to about 5% of our overall budget. That's why it's extremely critical for us to really utilize that Measure C funding throughout the year, and it's critical for the replacement of our police equipment. This page is going through the FY26 fee changes, so it's our fee adjustments that we're looking at. You'll notice that there is parking citations. We have increased the parking citations by $5 to offset increased staffing, software, and equipment costs. As mentioned before, we have the massage establishment and sole proprietor permits, redeveloping the municipal code and associated fees within this permit. And it's an overall kind of priority of ours to increase public safety within the community. Additionally, we had some minor animal control fee adjustments, again, to offset increasing staff costs, and then additionally are raising the education fee within those fees to reflect higher service costs. And then I did note that we do have some other fee changes, just very minor, but it does not necessarily affect our revenue significantly. So that concludes my portion, and I wanted to see if there's any questions.
Do the commissioners have any questions?
I do not.
I'll start. Give you a chance to get your notes together. So I'm a little confused about the massage permits and the relationship to public safety. Could you explain that in a little bit more detail to us?
Absolutely. So massage parlors, we would like to think that that is, maybe I'll give an example, Massage MD, right? But there's a specific licensing that goes with this. We've been working with Heather from the city attorney's office. She can give you all of the legalese and the legal explanation, but what we find is often you have massage therapists, and we work with the California Massage Therapy Council, that are not necessarily on the up and up. And so there are things that are occurring in these establishments that shouldn't be occurring, that are actually a threat to public safety, where you have, maybe you have human trafficking occurring, you have more than massages occurring, you have different types of different criminal activity that is occurring. So what this allows us to do is do inspections, revoke permits, and actually make sure that the establishments that we have in the city of Santa Barbara are on the up and up and providing the appropriate service in the appropriate way. So I think that's the best way to kind of explain it for this purpose. Like I said, Heather can give you all of the legalese that goes with it, but our municipal code has not been updated since, I think, 1970. We are way behind in what we should have on the books in terms of what the ordinance and the municipal code says. The California Massage Therapy Council has actually been reaching out to us, imploring us to make these changes as well, so that, there is a longstanding desire for these establishments to exist, but in a legal way, and to make sure that legal services are occurring the way they should, and that we have the appropriate enforcement mechanisms to deal with it. So that is what we talk to in terms of public safety and appropriate enforcement.
Okay, so if I understand it, this is not that we're going to start charging fees for all the illegal services that are taking place there. This is, in fact, that we're going to be doing higher levels of investigation and monitoring.
Yes.
Which will cost money.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And to put a little more into that, this is a change that is happening across the state. It is directed or kind of seen within the California Business and Professions Code. They designated the California Massage Therapy Council essentially as the oversight agency to implement recommended changes. And this change is happening across the state with other agencies, and we're looking to align and really conform to those specific changes. We're seeing it within the city of Goleta, the county. This is something I think the state is going to be moving towards all across. So.
And I have another just sort of simple question, I think. Could we have the name of the assistant chiefs for the two sections which have assistant chiefs? Because I'd love to be able to know who they are.
So Assistant Chief?
Yes.
Mary Linda Arroyo? oversees patrol operations.
Okay,
And Assistant Chief Kenny Kushner oversees our investigative and strategic operations.
okay. And just because I'm a geek for flowcharts, why is the community accountability commander in a different box?
It's the way it adds up in trying to put it all on the screen. So the Community Accountability Commander reports directly to me.
Got it.
That Community Accountability Commander does not report to one of the assistant chiefs or to the Internal Services Manager. So just, it's the way it lines up in terms of the flow chart piece.
Thank you.
So that division, and intentionally so, reports directly to me.
Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready, thank you.
Good.
Thank you for that time to gather my thoughts and notes. Thank you both very much, as always, appreciate it. The crime analyst position, is this common in other police departments that you're aware of? And is it a new position entirely, or is it reassigning the job duties of an existing position?
It is very common in most agencies to have a crime analyst. We used to have one many years ago, and it was cut. And this will be a brand-new hire and brand-new position.
Great, thank you. With regards to the strategic plan for 2026, are you setting a duration? And the reason why I ask is because typically a strategic plan would be like a 3-year or a 5-year or a 10-year strategic plan. So when you kind of go into the process, is it going to be, 26 to 30 or 31 or?
We're going to do an RFP and work with a consultant to determine what the best term is. I don't want to put, I'm not a fan of 5 or 10 year. I would assume that we'll probably end up in somewhere between 2 and 3.
Okay.
But, I don't want to put a number on it in this moment because we're going to be very intentional. We're not doing this internally. We're going to work with a consultant and we'll do an RFP and go out on the whole process of this. And we'll work with that consultant because that consultant will be the one organizing a lot of the interactions, not just with our internal staff, but with the community and with the Fire and Police Commission as we work through it.
Makes sense, thank you. Lastly, I think, no, 2 more things. With regards to the strategic plan, will the organizational wellness piece that you'd mentioned on that same slide be like under the umbrella of the broader strategic plan, or is that going to be a separate effort?
No, that's separate.
Great, thank you. And lastly, with regards to the revenue slide number 6, I think I got the slides right this time. There was a reference to internal charges. Yes, could you just unpack that for me, the differentiation between 25 and 26 on the internal charges line?
Yes, you'll see that it has increased to 587,000. That is through an interdepartmental aid. So currently we have one sergeant who is working through the airport, and we're providing aid to the airport, and that is a cost recovery of that position. And so in internal charges, it's seen as a revenue for the department.
Okay.
So it's a full cost recovery of the position. So essentially, we're expensing and then receiving the revenue for that.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
I think I got that, but maybe not. So for fiscal year 2026, the internal charge of $587,000 will be paid by the Airport Commission or some other entity?
Not the full dollar amount of that. There's an increase, so 25. When we did the 24-25 budget, this was not part of it, so it looks different. So that's why you see that projection for 25 in that way. And then in 26, we're fully realizing that within the budget. So it is what we have in terms of internal revenue charges now, plus that additional where we're getting the full cost recovery for the services of having a sergeant at the airport.
Okay, and the cost recovery is coming from,
Their enterprise fund out at the airport.
got it, thank you very much. Any other questions from the commissioners?
I just have a few.
Excellent.
Is it possible to just broadly estimate in the salaries part, how much is overtime?
Good question.
So we have
The
budgeted,
expenses.
if you want to, okay. We have budgeted, I believe it's right around 2.6 million for salaries. It does, or for overtime, I apologize. Overtime does vary. It's dependent on caseload of community events. We currently have it at 2.6 million. I believe that is the total.
So it's kind of a historical,
We use the historical to determine what we think it's going to be. We look at number of vacancies, all sorts of different things. We work with finance on it. We've typically been underfunded in overtime, so we're trying to make sure that that is an appropriate number. The goal, hopefully, in the future, as we decrease our number of vacancies, then we can, decrease some of the overtime. We will never eliminate overtime. That's the thing for us is that, when we have something occur and detectives get called in the middle of the night, that's overtime expense. So it's not just about the vacancies for us. When you see Fiesta, all those officers that you see out there, or you see all those officers out for 4th of July, a good portion of our overtime budget is all of the special events that you have here in the city.
okay. And then just staying on the same slide, the capital equipment and projects, 13.9, almost 14 million. Looking ahead to 2027, do you see that recurring?
I believe this is going to change pretty quickly here with the new building being developed, and we're currently in the groundbreak phase and moving forward with that. We're going to see additional transfers into that. So I think the overall budget is over 100 million, and we're going to see that 100 million be realized within the specific category.
And it's all related to the debt issuance. I'm sure Keith could come up and talk further about it if you wanted more specific, but there's, through the issuance of the financing for this, there's an amortization schedule about how much each year that debt schedule is. So that's a number that in the beginning is more, and then it will taper off after a few years, but that's already set and through finances work, and I have to give them a whole lot of credit for all of the work that they've done to secure that financing and the bond issuance and everything. So that comes out of Measure C, and it's so much per year, and you see that is budgeted out appropriately.
Yeah. So roughly, does it taper off in 5, 10 years, or it becomes zero at some point?
Thank you so much for the question about the debt issuance for the police facility. So we issued debt a number of months ago. It's for both the police facility and also the Dwight Murphy field and playground projects. And so while we're in the construction phase, we only need to pay interest on the debt. Once the building is completed and then up and running and occupied, we will then be paying principal. We'll be paying over the next 30 years. And so the funding for that will come out of Measure C. It'll be a line item in the Measure C budget to pay the ongoing debt service payments for the project. You will see a larger amount towards the police project for the next probably 2 to 3 years. And that's primarily due to some additional costs that are going to be expected and realized for the construction of the project, for the full occupancy of it, including technology expenses, furniture, fixture, and equipment, insurance, a couple of other additional items that were not scoped out as part of the debt issuance. And so at this time, we will be needing to appropriate additional Measure C cash to pay for those additional expenses. Once all that is done and the building is complete, I think it's around a $7 million annual debt service payment going forward for the next 30 years.
I see. So this 14 million for 2026, is that mostly interest, you say?
It's actually mostly additional cash that we'll need to kind of put aside to pay for those additional expenses. The interest is actually, I can't, off the top of my head, I don't know what it is, but it's a smaller portion of the 14 million.
Okay. So it's really for the new building construction?
It's all for the new building construction.
Okay. What do we charge now for the current buildings?
For the current facilities?
Yeah. Is it in there? Is that the?
It is not. Maybe I'll turn it back over to police staff.
Yeah,
That-
that's the internal service charges. I don't know which slide it's on, but
One more. It would be seen in the allocated costs. While these are pretty general categories, facility maintenance is within the allocated costs. But that also, the allocated costs also include IT services, vehicle maintenance, vehicle replacement, custodial services, and lastly, it's the facility maintenance services.
Okay.
And we're in a building that we currently own as a city, so we're not paying for the building itself.
Right.
That's already a city asset. So what we pay for in terms of the building now is all the things that keep it functioning. Janitorial services, those type of things are part of that. So those are all part of those allocated costs, but we're not paying for the building itself at this point.
Okay.
It's,
Got it.
the city has had that building since 1954, I believe. So we've long since paid for that building.
Okay.
So it's not a matter of paying for the building anymore, it's paying for, our facility maintenance is extremely high in the building because it is an old building. So that's part of those allocated costs, the custodial type of thing, or, when the generator, breaks down, like, those pieces are all in that allocated cost portion.
Right. No, that's very helpful. And lastly, this is kind of complicated, and it's just a more out of curiosity question. If you go back to the organization chart, roughly, in which boxes are the 34 new positions?
They're not new positions.
Okay, but which roughly?
So those
are they
34
spread out?
positions are all in patrol.
Okay, all on patrol.
Yes,
Okay.
because those are maintaining public safety is those officers that are answering the 911 calls. So all of that Measure I funding has been designated from our patrol division.
Okay. The criminal analyst is a new one though, right?
The criminal analyst, but that is because we made some internal adjustments
Okay.
in terms of classifications of others. So we did not come to the city and ask for more money
Okay.
to create the position. We made internal changes out of our current budget to fund that position.
Okay. So you kind of rejigged the,
Yes.
okay. Thank you very much.
Any further questions from commission?
Kind of a question or statement. I appreciate Commissioner Lapuz for bringing us back to this chart because it reminded me of the first thing I wanted to point out, which, have you ever heard of Prezi? So, just in case you haven't, it allows you to kind of zoom in and zoom out in presentations, so it may be helpful for the future. We've used it quite a bit.
Send it to your IT department.
Well, that is part of what we don't have, right? We don't have a crime analyst. So you're looking at the people that are doing these presentations. Like, I don't have someone to do the presentations, and neither does he. So that is part of what we're working on. And with our coordinator and with Sam, that's why you see what you're seeing is improved in that sense. It's hard no matter what. And we also have to be mindful that whatever we put it in, when we send it to the public, because we take these same presentations and put them online, we have to also make sure that they're accessible. So I appreciate the comments because it is something that we have been internally working on in terms of the presentations. The org chart, we have not figured out something that's great or not great. I mean, I could zoom in now if we needed to, but we also, when it comes to software, have a limitation on what we do too.
And I say that with
No,
all due
I
respect.
appreciate the feedback. Trust me, we have had long conversations about how we make this in a format that is more easy to read.
Right, well, your PowerPoint presentation skills exceed mine tremendously, so thank you.
We're trying, but like I said, it's part of having that analyst, and I will say Sam, our community coordinator, has helped us a lot with some of our different things, but we are very lean in terms of our administrative staff within the department, and what you typically see, whatever we bring to you monthly, I can tell you is a chief, a commander, a business manager that are doing that. We don't actually have administrative staff that puts it together for us. Those presentations are put together by us. So, next month when you see the RIPA presentation from Commander Casapis is the one that has painstakingly put that together. So part of that is to help us, have the ability to get some administrative help with those pieces and put the data in a format that is better. Because, listen, we're police officers at heart. We're trying to improve our skills, but we're also trying to bring in some professional staff that can help us with that. And like I said, hopefully you've seen a difference in what we're putting out in our social media and the work that Sam is doing and, using, I don't even know what it is, Canva or whatever it is to create, those presentation moments. So I appreciate the comments. It's something that we are working on and we understand need to come up, so.
So that leads me to a question, or maybe it's actually a comment. I just wonder what the time overhead is of the police department on a monthly basis to put together the packages that they present to us, because you do this every month, pretty much, and I don't think you do it just for your fun. I think that they come for the specific purpose of the commission, and maybe the commission needs to be concerned about how much of the police department's time is being consumed in that regard. Can you comment on that?
It is actually a pretty significant amount of time that we spend putting together the presentations and the material because it is things that we look at, but putting it into a presentation for the community is time consuming because, we have to remember, we look at we look at the material and we understand it. Right? We understand complaints, all the nuances or uses of force and all the different categories, but then we have to translate that into a format that translates for all of you and the community as well, because you don't necessarily understand the language that we're speaking. Sure. So we actually, I think Commander Casapis would probably tell you, just on the RIPRA presentation alone and putting that into the presentation, he's probably spent an entire 40-hour week doing that at this point. And that also then includes our coordinator pulling all of that RIPA data. And because you don't just pull it, you then have to pull it and put it into a usable format. So yeah, there is a significant amount of time that we spend. We want to make sure what we're giving you is quality and what you're asking for. And we're answering the questions. We want to make sure that we are being transparent and accountable to the community, but it is a significant amount of work. So there is that. When we're asked for additional material, there is an additional amount of time that we spend providing that.
Chief, will the analysts be able to take some of that load off you all? The new position?
The hope is to take part of that so that when we get the data, that analyst can do more of the putting that data into a format that is more understandable. But we also know that the analyst won't be able to explain what a use of force is. So, yes, there will be a portion, but that won't be all of it. That will still be in large part sworn staff at the commander level putting that together.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So many agencies, law enforcement agencies, federal and local, use interns. And they use college students and graduate students for a lot of work. And I don't want to label it as free labor, but it is a bit of free labor. And I know sometimes they obviously need direction and guidance and training, and in this case, a background check. Do you use any interns? And I don't mean like your police explorers, but like true interns.
We do. So take, for example, our police coordinator, Sam. She started as an intern with us. So yes, we do. But we also, interns
Come and go.
And interns also don't have the ability necessarily to digest crime statistics and that type of, information.
And I don't mean for some high-level things. I mean for easier things like we were talking about PowerPoints, we're talking
Which
about
is
Prezi,
where-
we're talking about
yes,
things like
we-
that. Those are great for interns.
Yeah, and that's where we had used Sam, as an intern. She helped us with our social media and getting our social media started. And now we've hired her full-time, which is great, but now we are, once again, we'll be looking for more interns come fall semester. So that is a piece that we do. But we also pay our interns as well. So it is not,
Better.
we do not use them as, quote, free labor. And we look for it as another opportunity for recruiting as well, because,
Sure.
like I said, Sam started as an intern and now she's a full-time employee with us, so.
Is there a number that you have that you would accept 5 interns or 10 interns or anything like that?
We have to have the budget to pay for it, so it's not a specific number. And we have to have the appropriate work, and we also have to have the ability to appropriately supervise. So that is the other piece, is that training piece, there's a balance with that. Because when you have someone that comes in as an intern, we also have to make sure that we have the ability to train and work with that person to give them the best ability to be successful. So there is a balance with that. I mean,
Have
I've
you
used
considered
interns.
have you considered unpaid interns? Like, for instance, the DA's office has a
No,
whole
we-
slew of them.
No, but the city attorney's office and, John and Heather are already nodding their head, no. No, we cannot use unpaid interns, so.
Dangerous, I think.
So,
If I may, Chair Dozier, there's 2 issues that, first, state law changing the ability to have unpaid interns. Usually you can do it if it's related to school issues, education, you're getting credit for it, but just to have interns unpaid, we're prohibited. Second thing, you also have to talk about union concerns. If those interns are taking in scope of duties of paid jobs, that also complicates it. We would have to meet and confer on those issues. So those are 2 potential roadblocks on that.
so we typically, if we advertise for an intern, we advertise for a specific function as well. So, like, we'll advertise for a social media intern where we're looking for a student who also has an interest in social media, because we're looking for that, that skill set specifically. We can do a general, but we've been trying to do ones where it's a little more specific with what we're looking for.
Great, thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Now, for the future, there's actually AI programs that you could deploy. I used to run a huge consulting firm, but I retired. But I still do consulting work. But to generate PowerPoint slides today, I use an AI program. But that means all your data have to be linked, so there's an infrastructure cost to that. But that's for the future.
And I just want to apologize for starting this tangent.
Let's not go any further into AI, please.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any public comments?
Vice Chair Hill, we do not have any in-person or online public comments.
All right, and I suspect the commissioner's comments have already been made as part of the questions. Are there any more? All right, good. So we go on to the next agenda item, please.
Item 8, Santa Barbara Fire Department fiscal year 2026 proposed budget.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chris Males, Fire Chief. I'm here with the Fire Department's Business Manager, Amy Van Atta. I will be doing the majority of the presentation, and Amy is here with our OpenGov budget book, and will be answering any deep questions. So I'm going to go over the high level, and then she's here for the expertise. Thank you for joining us. And good afternoon. As has been mentioned by Director DeMartini, our department is a general fund fire department. We have a couple of caveats to that, which I'll share. We do have some inputs from the Airport Enterprise Fund that makes up our total budget. I'll get to that in just a few minutes. We are largely presenting a status quo budget for fiscal year 2026 and 2027. We have asked, and I will discuss it later, but we've asked to fill one position that's been held vacant for the last 2 years. And when we get to the organizational chart, I'll show where that person is going. We're going to be, hopefully, with council's approval, filling that position. Next slide. So we're going to cover department organization, department priorities, revenues, expenses, and fiscal year 2026 budget adjustments. That's going to be the agenda for today. As the PD showed, we have a little bit of a simpler org chart. They showed 211 FTEs. We have 105, which I'll get into a little bit more detail. As I've mentioned before in previous sessions, the fire chief oversees 4 divisions of the fire department: administrative, operations, fire prevention, and the Office of Emergency Services. I largely oversee administration. Brian Fetterman is the operations division chief. He oversees about 90 personnel. So the lion's share of our personnel come in that second column. Ryan DeJulio is our fire marshal and battalion chief. And then we have 2 personnel in the Office of Emergency Services, our emergency services manager and our public outreach coordinator. So that totals up 105 FTEs. The additional, or we're requesting to refill or refund the Inspector 3 position, which is the third one down. That position has been held vacant for the last 2 budget cycles. That is an inspector captain level. So we have asked to refill that position. And we hope council approves that at the budget hearing. We also are only reclassifying one position. That means moving from one class to a higher class. And that's it really for our asks for fiscal year 26. So just to review, fire department is authorized for 105 full-time equivalents. That does not include hourlies. You have heard that we have an hourly fuels crew. We have 6 personnel that are overseen by one of our fire services specialists, and we do a lot of vegetation management work in the parks and open spaces of Santa Barbara. So they are hourly, so they're not included there. I will show where they are budgeted from. Our overall budget is $45.4 million. 42.4 is general fund. We have other funds totaling $3.1 million and capital of $2.7. Our major initiatives for fiscal year 2026 include the ongoing implementation plan for our standards of cover study. That was recently completed, and right now we're working with the city administration and have hired a consultant to help us navigate how best to roll out the findings of the standards of cover study. It is as thick as what you might call an old Los Angeles phone book. It's 300 plus pages with numerous findings, all very, very positive for our community. So we're working with a consultant on how to daylight that to not only the internally at the fire department, but also to the community. It does involve making changes to the way that we do business. But this was a really deep dive into everything from fire stations to personnel to calls. So there's a lot to digest in that report. Succession planning is always important to the fire department. Turnover does occur, and I think kind of a theme that came out of Chief Gordon's presentation that I can echo here is that all of our personnel are incredibly engaged in the fire department. I remember when I was testing for fire chief, I received great advice, which was you have to be a working fire chief. You can't sit in your office and twiddle your thumbs. You have to be involved. And I think that's really holds for both the police and fire departments. All of our personnel are engaged and doing what it takes to get the job done. And I'm really proud of all of our personnel who work very diligently on a daily basis. Evaluation of fleet needs is one of our major initiatives. Fleet, as I have mentioned in a previous conversation, the cost of fleet has gone up over 100% in the last 10 years. We have apparatus that we just purchased 2.5 years ago in the 700,000 range that are now in the 1.2 million range. So the cost of apparatus is increasing astronomically, and we're going to need to be creative on how we fund, purchase, and use the apparatus. As I said earlier, we are requesting to fill an Inspector 3 position. That is a captain level or supervisor of the Fire Prevention Bureau. It would work right below the fire marshal. Also, very soon, in fact, on the 22nd of May, our next meeting, you will be receiving a report on the new Genesis evacuation software that the city and county are implementing as a team. In fact, all of the agencies in the county are implementing it. It's a very rapid deployment of evacuation notifications, and Stacy Rosenberger, our emergency manager, will be talking about it. Also, we've requested funding to update the city's emergency operations plan. That's required to be updated every few years and is due for an update. So believe the recommended budget going forward is to ask council to have a consultant work with us to update our emergency operations plan. In 2026, we do have some fee changes that will be coming. In 2025, we did a very comprehensive fee study by a consultant who identified that our really years old fee schedule needed to be updated. As was discussed, the fire department doesn't really charge fees per se unless they are fees due to an individual or a business. In other words, the fire department doesn't charge to go out to put out your house fire. However, if we spend 4 hours doing a fire inspection of a commercial building, we do seek recouping funds for that. So we're going to see what's estimated to be about a 22% increase in our fees overall. Fiscal year 26 for capital, Measure C. Couple of years ago, we established an equipment replacement fund. We really didn't have a fund that had set up regular replacement of equipment. As you know, this emergency equipment must be relied upon on a moment's notice, and it's standard for us to replace everything from our defibrillators to our jaws of life. It also includes replacing a lot of equipment in the fire stations themselves. So we're very thankful that the city agreed to that. Regional dispatch, hot off the presses. We are now have a firm date that the fire department will be navigating away from the police department's communications center and moving to the fire regional center on May 14th. So just a couple of weeks away. As I've mentioned before, it's part of a much bigger picture to really allow the fire service to function on more of a county level with borderless response, closest available unit, regardless of jurisdiction. It's going to be really advantageous for us because we have Montecito and 2 county stations that sit right on the outskirts of our city that are really going to be closer to some of our areas. So it's going to allow us to utilize those additional resources. And really, I've told people for a long time, we're moving essentially from an 8-station department to an 11-station department overnight. So that's going to be great for our community. Additionally, in Measure C, other than the equipment replacement, we have 2 items that we've pulled out of just equipment replacement because they're such high-cost items, and that is we are due to replace all of our portable radios in fiscal year 26 and our self-contained breathing apparatus. They have a 15-year life, and they have to be replaced at 15 years, and they are due to be replaced in 26 and 27. And then Measure I think we've talked about. Director DeMartini talked about that. So we do have a slide in just a minute about it, just for a little bit more info. Looking at revenues for our department, fees and service charges, you'll see the 25 projections and the 26 recommended. The lion's share of those fees come from the airport fire station. Fire Station 8 at the airport within Santa Barbara Airport's territory. As you know, the airport is an enterprise fund. They pay for 100% of the cost of that fire station, and they actually also pay for a portion of support personnel in the city, a portion of our division chief of operations, a portion of our training staff. And so those are customary charges to have an enterprise fund reimburse the general fund. And then the other increase, the more minor increase in that is due to the anticipated increase in revenue from our fee study that was done. The next item, intergovernmental, you'll see a large decrease. The reason for that is that we right now have our hand crew that is paid for by the Coastal Conservancy grant. And so, but that grant is coming to an end, but thankfully, the CAL FIRE has come through with a 5-year grant that will begin. However, it's just a number shift. The Parks and Recreation Department will be funding through that grant the personnel for that. So we will supply the personnel, but the funding of the grant, it was applied for by Parks and Rec, and so they will be funding those positions. So that's the decrease that you see. The remaining 1.5 million that you see in FY26 is what we preload for mutual aid reimbursement. The city puts the 1.5 million into our budget, and then we are expected to pay our personnel as they engage in mutual aid assignments throughout the year, throughout the fiscal year. Other revenues include first responder reimbursement from American Medical Response, and our Wildfire Suppression Assessment District is also in there. As you know, the Suppression Assessment District is up in the Riviera and above Foothill. The suppression assessment is funded by a special tax to all the residents in that area, and that funds a position which then allows us to do chipping services, street brushing, just increased maintenance in the area in an effort to mitigate fire risk. Taxes are staying the same. That's taxes that the city receives in and then filters down to each department. The small amount at the bottom of 34,000, that's actually our mobile data computers, and that is a carved out funding for the mobile data computers that are on the apparatus and the software and equipment that's required to keep the mobile data computers functioning in the apparatus. A lot of people may not realize, but that actually requires a 24-hour cell signal. It's like having your phone on 24 hours a day, and that mobile data computer is transmitting information back and forth. That comes with a cost. So there's our anticipated revenues for the year. Expenditures. As you know, with the fire department, police department, and most of the city, the lion's share, the majority of our expenditures are in salaries and benefits. And so looking at salaries, it might ping your interest that that's dropping a little bit in FY26. That's because of the hand crew. So the hand crew is actually being transferred over to Parks and Rec. So that's the only reason that our salaries have dropped down. And then, of course, benefits. Allocated costs are, as the police department mentioned, fees, interdepartment fees such as fleet, such as IT, such as facilities maintenance, things like that that keep the fire department and the fire stations functional. Supplies and services, as you would think, is just that. It's everything from oxygen masks to ropes to Xerox toner that we need and Xerox machines. Our capital equipment for FY26 and 27 includes, just a second, includes equipment and repairs to things like turnouts and just other equipment to make sure that our firefighters are ready for the job. It also includes our dispatch. I'm sorry, no, that's in non-capital. So I skipped a line, I apologize. So our capital equipment includes regional dispatch and equipment replacement that I talked about earlier. Non-capital equipment, excuse me, includes the equipment that I talked about earlier. You'll see a large increase in that because we are funding our SCBAs and radio replacement in FY26. So that's why you see that that amount has gone up. In special projects, that is just what it says, special projects. The reason for the large increase in 2026 is that we will be having an academy. And very important that the police department's a little bit different. They either hire laterals or they send people to a regional police academy. We bring firefighters in and teach them internally. It's actually a really cost-effective way for us to teach. Question about regionalization, do I foresee that in the future where we can hire on a regional basis and train on a regional basis? That is a possibility, except a lot of our departments are a little bit smaller, and when they need to hire, they need to hire. And it may not coincide when other departments need to hire. So we've done it in the past and tried, but it doesn't always work out. But we we attempt to do so. Transfers is simply moving some funding into another area, and this is for a couple of years ago, the city authorized a lease purchase program to purchase 3 fire pumpers and a ladder truck. Pleased to tell you that the ladder truck will be arriving likely by June. It has been several months in the making. So that's just a transfer from one account into another. And this is just an overview again of where our money goes. You can see that 78% of our department is salaries and benefits. And the remaining 22% is the other funds that you see. This is essentially why when we reach really, really lean budget times, that it's very difficult to cut the fire department because such a large portion of our funding is for salaries and benefits that it just doesn't take a lot until we get down to personnel riding on the fire engines. So it is difficult for public safety, including the fire department, to make cuts. Measure C allocation for FY26. Again, I'm repeating myself just a little bit, but our move to regional dispatch will be complete by FY26, and we are estimating that that is going to be the cost for the year. The regional dispatch is going to charge every agency, including the host agency, County Fire, a fixed dollar amount per call. So we've made a generous estimate of what we think it's going to cost. However, if all of a sudden the city is running 2,000 more calls a year, the cost could go up. But looking at our call volume increasing over time, we don't anticipate that to exceed that amount. I've talked about the equipment replacement fund, and then once again, the SCBA and portable radio equipment. So that's coming out of Measure C for FY26. And then Director DeMartini talked about the 19 firefighters that are being funded through Measure I. We have identified those actual positions in the fire department and which positions will be funded through Measure I moving forward. So our FY26 adjustments that we are proposing, that we've proposed to the city administrator and will be going before you today, and then to City Council is, as I've mentioned, we are hoping to fill the Inspector 3 position in the Fire Prevention Bureau. A little bit more about that. I kind of think as the Fire Prevention Bureau in two tranches, or which I guess I should say 2 buckets. One is the structural side. Those are the folks that do the building inspections of, again, new construction, businesses, things like that. And then we have the vegetation management side. And those are the folks that that supervise the hourly fuels crew that work in the suppression assessment district and that go out and work to make the city as safe as possible in vegetation management. So what we're proposing to do overall is to have both of those subdivisions of fire prevention both have a supervisor that then reports to the fire marshal. I think that increase in personnel is going to be much more effective for our folks. I mentioned about all of us being working personnel that do whatever needs to be done. The fire marshal is actually doing a whole lot of work that is below his position, and so I think this is going to work much better so that the fire marshal is able to concentrate on his duties. We've also received permission from the city administrator to push forth reinstate our training overtime budget. When we send people to classes, depending on which type of class it is, we will often pay overtime for those people to go. Not always. Some are classes where our personnel go and are not reimbursed if, say, they're sitting in a classroom. But if they're at a wildland fire school or an auto extrication class or something like that that has a really high chance, not high chance, but a chance of being injured or then we will pay overtime for that. Also, if it's a required class that the people go to, they're paid for. So what we did was we were able to reinstate and bring back up our training overtime budget for 26. We had decreased it in 25. And then, as you saw with the transfer, we're funding the lease payments of our 4 apparatus. Interestingly, all of those lease payments were for 7 years, and it's in excess of 2 years before we've even received a couple of those fire apparatus. So by the time we get them, they're 2 years paid off. That's kind of like your mortgage being paid off before you ever go into the house. But anyway, we're moving forth with that. And what's great is those apparatus have a 25-year life. So they'll be paid off in 7 years. I mentioned the emergency operations plan review and revision. That's going to be a consultant to do that for us. We don't have the bandwidth to be able to do a comprehensive review of our emergency plan. And then there's a minor change, an adjustment of about $18,000 of an allocation to the equipment replacement fund that was just a minor clerical error. And really, that's it for the fire department. And happy to take any and all questions.
Do we have any questions from the commission?
Yes. Thank you, as always. With regards to the Fire Inspector 3 position, if funded, will it be an internal recruitment? We'd open up for an external recruitment?
So thank you for the question, Commissioner. There are two types of recruitments. There's an internal recruitment, and then there's what we call an open recruitment. This will be an open recruitment.
And then, oh, you mentioned the regional dispatch, that it's a cost per call?
Correct.
What is that cost per call, do you know?
Oh, boy, I know it's changed. I think it's around $70 a call,
Oh, wow.
$72 a call. Very, very standard, by the way. This is, a lot of regional dispatches are funded that way. There's a fixed cost for the infrastructure of the building, things like chairs and replacement of the computer-aided dispatch, and then there's the variable cost of cost per call. Also, interestingly, it's really pretty scientific the way they do it. And I'll just give you an example. If one of our city resources ends up responding into the county for a call, it's the county that's going to pay that dispatch fee. Conversely, if the county comes into the city and handles one of our calls, we will pay the dispatch fee, but we don't pay for their personnel. Okay, so that's the only thing we pay for is the actual dispatch. And it's a reciprocal agreement that we are expecting to be going into each other's jurisdictions. And of course, I don't know of one citizen that would mind that the fire truck is showing up quicker, nor do they care about the color of the fire truck. They just want the vehicle there as quick as possible. And that's really what this regional center is going to do for us.
Right. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I have some questions. Again, it's my first time to see the budget, so maybe their prior commission meetings, these were answered. I just noticed as you mentioned, the salaries and benefits is 78% of the budget. Compared to the police department presentation earlier, the benefits to salaries are almost 1-to-1. The police is almost 1-to-2. If you shut up that slide, I was just curious, why is it, see, it's almost 20 million, 14 million, so it's almost 1-to-1. The police is, now, it could well be because they have a larger force, it's almost double, right? And then so the majority are the patrol folks, so their benefits won't be as large. That's have you noticed that? Is it historical?
So I appreciate that. I hadn't looked at the comparison. I will say this, you're right, in a sense that we are roughly half the size of the police department. The police department is a much more complex department to run than the fire department, and what that requires is a lot more professional staff. We have, of our 105 personnel, 95% of our people, 95, sorry, not 95%, 95 of our people are either on fire apparatus or they are fire inspectors. And with that comes a greater cost. We only have 10 people that support the operations of 95 on the streets. So we have less professional staff. Professional staff may cost less. Also, yeah, thank you. Amy just said they have 68 personnel in their administrative staff. We have basically 10. With that, there is a higher cost of having firefighters and inspectors due to everything from salaries to retirement, et cetera. We also have a department that is shifting, but as you know, pension reform took effect a number of years ago, and so we still have a number of senior personnel in our department that the retirement costs are greater. I would actually hope that we will start to see, as more younger firefighters come in, the cost should go down for the benefits.
Okay. And then a follow-up question on the salaries and benefits. Roughly how much is overtime?
Thank you for that question. About $5 million of it is overtime.
Okay.
But there's a caveat to that, and I want to explain a little bit. We have what's called a constant staffing plan. What that means is that when a firefighter calls in sick, we don't run that fire engine short with 2 personnel. We cannot. We actually bring in an overtime. That is standard in the fire department industry. The flip side to that would be to have additional firefighters on duty that could be plugged into holes if needed. The problem is that's an FTE, and that FTE comes with a cost. There's really been a lot of studies done that actually show that it's darn near a wash between having additional personnel or funding overtime. Also, of that $5 million, about over $1 million this year alone, this year has been mutual aid, which is reimbursed. So I'm doing the quick math. I mean, we've got basically 20%, it'd be 25, upwards of 30% of our overtime would be mutual aid reimbursed overtime. So that's something that you don't see in the other departments. When we go out on an assignment, our city is repaid for all of the personnel costs. They receive fees for the apparatus that go out, and then we also are able to charge a 16.7% administrative fee, which covers our workload, our requirements, our processing of all the claims, et cetera. So I don't want to be so bold as to say we make a lot of money on it, but it definitely covers our costs. And so I think that's a more accurate reflection of the overtime to include the mutual aid.
And then just future or forward-looking questions. I think it was CAL FIRE that published recently the fire risk hazard maps.
Yes.
And you've already partially answered my question, but I think with the integration with the county, I think you've kind of covered, as you said, maybe a faster response. But the second forward-looking question is, I read where the city plans to expand the airport northward towards the mountains, almost doubling, I think, the airport.
Yeah, that item was presented at council on Tuesday by the airport staff. I wasn't present for that presentation, so I don't know what's being expanded. I knew that they're looking at doing some renovation of some existing areas within the airport that haven't been renovated in a long time.
But it won't have a major budgetary effect on the fire department?
So I think it's important to note that the city fire department covers inside the chain link fence.
Oh, okay.
Okay, they only cover the airport operational area, which is where security is required. Their primary response is airport crash fire rescue. Okay, they don't respond off of the airport property, say into Goleta for a medical call. Anything outside the fence of the airport is actually handled by the county fire department as being the closest available resource. So if there's any expansion, it would be taken up by the county fire department being able to respond.
Thank you.
Amazing how complex the questions can be. Any further questions? Any public comment?
Vice Chair Hill, we do not have any in-person or online public comments.
Any further comments from the commissioners? I think you're done.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Do we have any further business? Hearing no further business, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.